Welcome to the Creative Commons RX podcast. Before diving into this episode, I want to ensure we're all on the same page. This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.
All right, welcome. In this explainer, we're going to break down the essentials of biosimilar substitution and, just as importantly, the communication skills you need to really ensure patient success.
So let's start with a really interesting question, a puzzle really, that you're definitely going to face as a clinician. Why is it that a scientifically sound switch in medication, one that should be totally seamless, can sometimes just fail?
And to get to the bottom of that, we have to start with the foundation. We've got to talk about the science and the regulations behind biosimilars. This is the bedrock, really, for everything else we're going to cover.
So what exactly is a biosimilar? It's not just a generic, not by a long shot. The key here is the FDA's language, which is super precise. It's a complex biologic that has to meet an incredibly high scientific bar to get approved. Okay, so these two phrases you see here, highly similar and no clinically meaningful differences, these are the absolute cornerstones of the FDA standard. Burn them into your brain. Because these phrases are your shield. They represent this incredibly tough scientific evaluation that proves a biosimilar isn't some lesser version of a medicine. All right, so we've got the science down. Now let's talk about the real world. How do these products actually get handled at the pharmacy? This brings us to a word that gets misunderstood all the time: interchangeability. So when you hear interchangeable biosimilars, I want you to think about one thing: the pharmacy. That's what this is all about. It's a very specific, very practical designation that's all about the logistics of substitution. And this is probably the single most important takeaway on this topic. Interchangeability is not a grade. It's not an A+ versus a B-. It's a regulatory tool. The FDA is super clear about this. An interchangeable product isn't clinically better or safer than a non-interchangeable one. They both hit the exact same high bar for safety and effectiveness.
And check this out. This Texas case study is a perfect example of how the rules play out on the ground. The default setting is basically to substitute if it saves money. But look at what a doctor has to do to stop it. They can't just tick a box. Nope. They have to physically write out "brand necessary" in their own handwriting. That's designed to be a high-friction action. And it's why you absolutely have to know the specific laws in your own state to stay in control. Okay, so we've covered the science and we've covered the rules, but here's the twist. The biggest hurdle to making a switch successful often has nothing to do with pharmacology. It's all about psychology.
And that brings us to the nocebo effect. You've heard of the placebo effect, right? Well, this is its evil twin. It comes from the Latin for "I shall harm." And the key word here, the one I really want you to focus on, is measurable. This is not just a patient being difficult or something being all in their head. This is a real psychobiological response we can actually see and measure. And the scary part is how easily we can trigger it without even realizing it. A slight hesitation in your voice, framing it as a cheaper version the insurance company is forcing on them, that little bit of uncertainty can be all it takes to plant a seed of doubt that grows into a real problem, a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you don't have to take my word for it. The evidence is, well, it's stark. Look at the data from clinical trials. In double-blind studies where patients have no idea they've been switched, discontinuation rates are low. But in open-label trials where they know about the switch, the rates shoot way up. It's the knowing, the negative expectation, that's driving the bad outcome. So if the problem is a negative expectation, then the solution, the cure really, is a clinical intervention designed to create a positive one. And that intervention, that medicine, is expert communication. A successful switch isn't just one conversation. Think of it as a process with 3 distinct phases. Before the switch, you're setting the stage, educating and building those positive expectations. During the switch, it's all about listening and making the patient feel like a partner. And after, you're not done. You follow up, you reinforce that support. Each step is absolutely critical.
Let's get into the practical tools. Technique number 1 is all about positive framing. You have to anchor the entire conversation in equivalence. Use that official FDA language we talked about, just as effective, same safety profile. And hey, don't forget, your body language, your tone of voice, that confidence is contagious. You're the expert they're looking to for reassurance.
All right, technique 2. This might be the most important one. Before you can dump a bunch of facts on a patient, they have to feel like you've actually heard them. You have to validate their feelings first. A simple phrase like, it makes complete sense that you'd have questions about this can change the entire dynamic. It builds the trust you need for them to actually hear and accept what you're saying.
And finally, technique 3, shared decision-making. Now, the key here is to reframe the goal. The switch might not be optional, right? So the conversation isn't whether to switch, it's how we're going to make the switch a success together. When you create a monitoring plan with them, you're giving back a sense of control. And that is a powerful, powerful antidote to anxiety. So let's wrap this up. The science behind these medicines is rock solid. The real question is your communication just as solid? Because at the end of the day, the success of these vital treatments doesn't just rest on pharmacology. It rests on your ability to build that trust, that confidence, one conversation at a time.
This is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient or pharmacist-patient relationship is formed. Using this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Clinical experts created the references, content, and clinical insight. NotebookLM, a Google AI tool, created the audio content, which I extensively reviewed before release. Finally, the host states that he takes all conflicts of interest seriously. Currently, there are no conflicts to disclose. For all of his disclosures and the companies he invests in or advises, he directs users to reach out independently, where he keeps an up-to-date and active list of all disclosures.